What's up, guys? It's KZ here. I just wanted to go ahead and make this video to discuss the Fighting Nerds, what we can expect to see from them in the future, future matchmaking. After UFC Noche and UFC Paris, a lot of people are, enjoying the fact that they lost and, they got, I guess, fraud checked and exposed and whatever else you want to say that happened to them. But, I'm here to just, discuss the team and say what we want to see from them moving forward. Carlos Prates, man, he had some solid wins in the UFC. He lost to Ian Gary, bounced back with that KO win over Jeff Neal, that nasty spinning elbow that we saw. But staying on the Ian Gary topic, he had Ian Gary crawling away like a scared little lady in fucking round 5, trying to survive on his hands and knees. He could have possibly gotten a round 5 comeback TKO, and nobody would have been like, "Oh, Carlos Prates sucks." He was just really slow in that fight. Ian Gary fought well, used his footwork, ran around the cage, hugged him when he could. But Carlos Prates lost the decision. He grew from that fight and made improvements. He bounced back with that, like I said, that insane KO over Jeff Neal, and now he's scheduled to fight Leon Edwards. We're going to see what's going to happen here. If he's able to continue the upwards trajectory, or if he's going to get styled on by another technical striker similar to Gary in Leon Edwards. We'll see if Leon still has what it takes to get wins at the top level here. In his last performances, he's looked pretty flat. He's looked pretty unmotivated. But those were against pressure wrestlers in Bilal and Sean Brady, not necessarily completely different style from Carlos Prates, just the polar opposites. So we'll see if Leon can, take advantage of this, I guess, stylistic matchup that benefits him. And we'll see if Carlos Prates wins, then, we'll see what goes on from there. He's probably going to fight like a Shavkat kind of guy. I don't think Usman would take the fight. Maybe an Ian Gary rematch. Too soon. But yeah, like someone in the top 5. But if he loses to, Leon Edwards, I'd like to see him fight a Joaquin Buckley or a Michael Morales. I feel like that'd be a very sick fight. Carlos Prates versus Michael Morales. Michael Morales coming off of that KO win over Gilbert Burns. Joaquin Buckley coming off of a tough loss against Kamaru Usman, but he was fighting hard in round 5. Buckley had some good moments apart from just not being able to get up in that fight. But yeah, Carlos Prates, I don't think that he came back and got a win, so he's not in the worst state of the other fighting as the rest of the Fighting Nerds all coming off of a loss. Carlos Prates has solid wins in the UFC, all KOs. Got Trevin Giles with a KO, Charles Radke, kneed him to the body, KO'd Li Jingliang, made it look relatively easy, beat Neil Magny, fucking smoked him, just lost that decision to Ian Machado Gary, and he damn near finished him in round 5. So we'll see. Moving on, we got Caio Borralho. Caio Borralho, he's got solid wins in the UFC as well. He went 5 hard rounds striking with Nassourdine Imavov in Paris, coming off of a double weight cut. Excuses, but he just couldn't get the takedowns, and he got out kickboxed by a better kickboxer. But he was competitive in the striking against a fighter in Imavov that KO'd Izzy in round 2. So I would say going 5 rounds striking with Imavov, even in a loss, still pretty impressive. He didn't get rocked, he didn't get dropped, he didn't get fucking beaten up horrifically. It was a competitive striking affair that Nassourdine Imavov got the better of. But yeah, to see Caio Borralho moving forward, I'd like to see him fight the loser of Renier de Ridder versus Brendan Allen, or maybe even Anthony Fluffy Hernandez when he comes back. But yeah, it's not the worst loss for Caio to lose to Nassourdine Imavov in Paris. That's just, that's a tough fight. Nassourdine Imavov is really fucking good, as we saw. But yeah, man, I feel like that's not something that we can just say, oh, Caio sucks because he lost a 5-round striking fight with Nassourdine Imavov. Maybe he should have pushed the pressure on the wrestling some more, but he didn't get it done. It is what it is. But he's got some good wins over Omar Gaziev. That guy is kind of like a UFC washout. Armin Petrosian, he's a good striker, but we saw him get KO'd by Shar Bullet with that nasty spinning back fist. Mahmoud Muradov, some big ass Kazakhstani guy, very physical and powerful. Got a sub win over Mikhail Oschajik, and we see that Mikhail is training with the Fighting Nerds now. making improvements since, he fought Caio Borralho. He beat Abus Magomedov in a competitive striking fight. But Caio Borralho was getting the better of those exchanges. He was landing the better shots. KO'd Paul Craig. Paul Craig. It's Paul Craig. He can't strike. Got a great win over Jared Cannonier. Actually came closer to finishing him than Nasruddin Imavov did. Nasruddin Imavov, that Cannonier stoppage was absolute bullshit. Anybody, with eyes can see that. Just no bias for me in that case. And that was just a bullshit stoppage. But, I think Caio Borralho can go ahead and move forward and have success in his next fight. We'll see. These guys should all be making improvements here as well with the wrestling offense and defense. Now, Mauricio Ruffy. This guy absolutely got fraud checked. He got fucking exposed. He got destroyed with zero resistance. He had zero success against BSD, and he got absolutely shit on. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys, oh, Ruffy, he's still good. He's good if he's facing, people that are pretty shit, like a Jamie Malarkey or a washed Bobby Green, or a fat Peruvian guy in James Yonta. So Ruffy, Jesus Christ, Ruffy. Okay, yeah. I don't want to say that he actually fucking sucks, but he definitely got fraud checked, and he did get shit on with zero resistance. He doesn't have any good wins over anyone good in the UFC, unlike Prates, Jean Silva and Caio Borralho. So we'll see. I mean, what's next for Ruffy? We can have him fight a prospect, a striker, like Daniel Zellhuber, if you want him to have a chance. Esteban Ribovics, it's a tough fight. I think Ribovics wins, but it gives Ruffy a better opportunity, and he's not going to get wrestle fucked. Or Manuel Torres, Or if you don't care about Ruffy and you just want to see him lose again, feed him to Chris Duncan. Maybe even Terrence McKinney would wrestle fuck him with the tenacity and the grappling pressure. Because, we've seen that Ruffy has a lot to work on in terms of just not quitting on himself in these tough grappling scenarios, Just spit on my laptop, Jesus Christ. But Ruffy, he's got a lot to work on. I feel like he's definitely had the biggest fall from like the hype to what the fuck happened to him in the cage, because BSD, he was coming off of that mediocre win over Kyle Prepolek, a UFC washout. And he got fucked up by Renato Moicano. He got fucked up by Dustin Poirier. Most people that I knew were picking Ruffy to just completely style on BSD and make him look stupid. And we were wrong. We were definitely wrong. So Ruffy has a lot of building back to do, and we'll see who he fights in his next fight. They might just feed him another can so that he can actually get a win here. But damn, Ruffy, bro, fuck. I know you guys were hearing what I was saying about Caio Borralho and Carlos Prates, and you're like, oh, this guy's a fighting nerds glazer. No, dude, I'm not. Ruffy fucking shit the bed completely, and he looked bad. He looked terrible. But moving forward, we got Jean Silva. Jean Silva had that insane fight with Diego Lopez. He took a lot of damage in round one against Diego Lopez, got battered, beaten up, and bloodied. Diego Lopez was having his way with him on the ground. But he was able to bounce back in round two and was landing huge shots on Diego Lopez, insane punches that would have put out any other featherweight. It's just that Diego Lopez's chin is absolutely fucking insane. So he was able to survive and come back and, get the spinning elbow knockout. And, Diego Lopez, he looked good in that fight other than eating these really, really hard shots. But, yeah, man, John Silva looked good in that fight besides, obviously getting finished. But you can't say that he wasn't landing huge shots on Diego. You can't say that he wasn't having success. Even after getting beaten up in the first round, he was still, tenacious enough to come back and try to put it on Diego Lopez, which he was. But, Diego Lopez just wasn't going to be denied. He wasn't going to be put out that night. So, yeah, man, he maintained his composure after a rough first round and came back strong in the second. I'd like to see him fight like an Arnold Allen or someone like a top 10 featherweight, because I feel like he is at that level. John Silva was looking really good in that fight against Diego Lopez. He has better wins than Mauricio Ruffy for sure. He's got some decent wins. Kevin Vallejos, that's a good win, even though Kevin Vallejos was pretty young. I'm pretty sure he was 21 in that fight. Weston Wilson sucks ass. Okay, I'd probably beat Weston Wilson. But Charles Jourdain, that's a good win over like a tough journeyman type that has a solid record in the UFC. Drew Dober, he made Drew Dober look slow, and he beat the fuck out of him like nasty. And, got a good win over Melsik Bagdasaryan, who kind of, I feel like, is a step down in competition from Jourdain and Dober, even though Melsik is a good striker. He's, fast, slick, got decent power on him. Fucked up Bryce Mitchell, smoked him bad. And then, he just went to fight the number 2 featherweight in the UFC, and he couldn't get back past the mountain that was Diego Lopez's chin. So, I feel like Caio Borralho, Carlos Prates, Jean Silva, they're not shit fighters just because they lost to like the top echelon of the division, and Ian Gary, who's number 5. And then, Nasruddin Imavov, who's number 2 or number 1, and Diego Lopez, who was number 2. Mauricio Ruffy losing to BSD, that's a completely different story. He got fucking fraud checked and exposed, all right? But the other guys, they still have a good chance to bounce back and get some good wins and get themselves back into the mix into the UFC. I mean, obviously, we saw what Carlos Prates just did to Jeff Neal, and, we'll see what he does upcoming against Leon Edwards. But I'd like to see Caio, just to reiterate, fight the loser of Brendan Allen RDR, maybe even a Dricus du Plessis. I don't think that would happen, though, because he's a former champ, but just based on Dricus's, performance in that championship fight, it wasn't very good. So there's potential there, as well as the welcoming Fluffy Hernandez back from injury. Caio Borralho could have that fight. And yeah, man, John Silva, I'd like to see him fight Arnold Allen or someone else in the featherweight top 10. But yeah, that should be it, man. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what's next for the Fighting Nerds. I'm definitely going to be coming back with a lot more content now that I got the internet set up. Everything's running well. I'm going to be doing UFC 5 streams, just talking streams where we're just talking like this. You can chat with me, and, I'll be reading it, obviously. You know how streams work. But yeah, guys, I appreciate you for tuning in, checking out the video. Smash like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Peace out.